And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines and simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena.
You sound slightly better. Happy Tuesday.
Slightly.
Yeah.
Happy Tuesday. Yes, I was just remembering what day it was.
Tuesday.
Yes, I am feeling slightly better. Slightly.
Keeping my fair distance from you. This works, the Zoom arrangement.
Yeah. So it's better to be safe through Zoom. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into our keyword news portion of the day. We're going to try to clarify these major headlines for our listener, starting with the president's trip to Amsterdam. This is our first keyword of the day.
Yoon in Netherlands.
So President Yoon has begun a state visit to the Netherlands that will mainly focus on, of course, strengthening semiconductor cooperation between the two countries. As we discussed on the segment before, while the Netherlands is the biggest chip manufacturing equipment provider in the world, so it makes sense that we would collaborate. It's also important to note that this is the first trip for a South Korean president to make a trip to this country since forming diplomatic ties.
That's right. The first official state visit, actually, by a Korean president is President Yoon, and he arrived in Amsterdam on Monday local time, commencing his 4-day trip. Now, as Air Force One entered Dutch airspace, he was accompanied or escorted by Dutch fighter jets. The first couple were welcomed by a Dutch guard of honor as well as a red carpet. This is, as you said, Korea's first state visit to the Netherlands since the two countries established diplomatic ties all the way back in 1961. He'll also be the first foreign head of state to visit the clean room of ASML, the leading Dutch semiconductor equipment maker. So basically, Korea does house some of the largest chip manufacturers in the world, but they can't do that really without ASML. And Yoon was scheduled to meet with Koreans living in Amsterdam later that day. He begins the official schedule, though, on Tuesday with a welcome ceremony and a private luncheon with the king and his wife. Also on Tuesday, he's scheduled to lay a wreath at a national monument in Dam Square and attend a state dinner at the Royal Palace in Amsterdam. He'll be accompanied by King Willem-Alexander during their tour of ASML on Tuesday, as well as Samsung Electronics Executive Chairman Lee Jae-yong and SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won. On Wednesday, Yoon is scheduled to visit the Dutch Parliament in The Hague, hold a bilateral summit with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, and have a joint press conference afterward. The Prime Minister will also host a business luncheon. Yoon will also participate in economic and cultural events, including a business forum attended by some 200 people and a meeting with Dutch veterans of the Korean War.
All right, so we'll be keeping close tabs on the president's trip to the Netherlands. We'll have some updates tomorrow. And we turn to the mother of all events next year for the South Korean political arena. All the bustle and all the bustle is happening because of this. The elections, our second keyword of the day.
Candidate registration.
And the race is now on. The race towards the 22nd general election kicks off officially today with the start of preliminary registration for candidates. We're seeing political heavyweights from both aisles of the spectrum. What's the latest?
That's right. So the preliminary registration system is basically to give political novices, if you will, who are less known than existing politicians, chances to promote themselves before official campaigning actually kicks off just 2 weeks before the election. So it's trying to give them a little bit of a head start and a little bit, or to try to even the playing field, if you will. Now, those wishing to become preliminary candidates can register by submitting documents like family relations certificates and criminal records and paying a deposit of 3 million won from 9 a.m. To 6 p.m. at the relevant election commission office. That deposit is actually quite a lot more heftier than I thought it would be. But yes, government officials and others in positions that limit candidacy must, of course, resign to apply for preliminary candidacy. You can't have two jobs at once. Even those who do not register as preliminary candidates must resign by January 11th next year to run in the election. Once registered as a preliminary candidate, one can engage in election activities. They can also establish a support committee and raise up to 160 million won. As a result, a wave of preliminary candidate registrations, especially among political newcomers, is expected from this day. We've already seen a host of announcements. Preliminary candidate registration is possible until the actual candidate registration application period, which is scheduled for March 21st to 22nd next year. The final lineup of candidates for each constituency will be confirmed during this period. After the candidate registration concludes, the official election period begins on March 28th, and the electoral roll is finalized on March 29th. Nationwide, numerous announcements of candidacies have coincided with the preliminary registration. The People Power Party, for one, is looking to try and get a majority in Parliament, which the opposition Democratic Party holds, but there is a little bit of in-house fighting happening in the People Power Party. Some expected candidates, such as Chang Jae-won, a key member of the PPP's pro-Yoon faction, has hinted that he might not actually be running for the general elections. And the PPP chief is also under pressure to resign because the chances of the PPP gaining that majority and winning enough seats is looking a bit slim at the moment, with all those kind of political conundrums at the moment. And also, another hurdle is the preliminary candidate registration will begin without a clear electoral district map, as the National Assembly has failed to finalize it due to political wrangling over the number of seats and the electoral system as well. So not surprising, really, but unfortunate nonetheless.
It happens in the political arena. Next year's elections are especially important for the Yoon administration, as President Yoon looks to, of course, solidify his third year as president, sort of the halfway point as president of South Korea. It's expected to clearly reflect a public sentiment on the current administration.
That's right. We saw a cabinet reshuffle recently as well, still potentially ongoing as well, because a lot of the government positions held by some of these people are going to be running in the general elections, but we'll have to see how they fare when it does come to April next year.
All right, as we move on to our third keyword of the day, for some of our listeners who are tuning in from abroad and you don't live in apartments, a little bit of context. Noise complaints are such a serious issue in a dense city like Seoul, Busan, many metropolitan cities across South Korea, that in some extreme cases, encounters turn violent or even deadly. That brings us to our third keyword of the day.
Noise level.
And so in response, the government says it will not authorize the completion of newly built apartments that do not meet interfloor noise standards. Can you tell us the details of the plan?
Yeah, so this is basically part of measures to tackle what has been widespread social problems surrounding noise disputes between neighbours. The Land Ministry said it won't issue approval to houses that don't meet the in-between floor noise standard of 49 decibels or below, which is equivalent to basically the noise levels of a quiet office, if you will. Now, if they fail to meet these standards, the companies must perform extra work to fix the issue. If they don't, residents, of course, can't move in, and the company has to pay for any delayed costs and compensate accordingly. Now, houses constructed by LH will have to abide by the standard of 37 decibels or below for interfloor noise, so they have a little bit of a stricter guideline. Before, the government only recommended these extra works, but now it is mandatory. Now, the ministry said it will also strengthen quality control by measuring interfloor noise during the mid-stage of apartment construction projects. The government is also increasing the number of apartments they check for noise from 2% to 5%, and will start these checks earlier in the construction process. This change is to prevent problems with finished buildings that are hard to fix, so basically before it's too late. The minimum thickness of floor slabs has also increased from 21 centimeters to 25. The government also share the noise test results with the public as well. This is to help renters and future buyers know about the noise levels in the apartments. These new rules will take some time, of course, to start showing results. They apply to building projects that started after August 4th last year. So the first buildings affected will be those finished between 2024 and 2025. The government is also planning to help with noise issues in older apartments. They will lend money to help install noise-reducing mats, and will cover all costs for low-income families as well, with children from 2025 as well. So yes, these do result in a lot of, at times, as you said, some deadly kind of disputes between neighbors. There has been precedent of some murders actually be taking place because of these disputes between floors. So yeah, the and it also alludes to kind of the issue of shoddy construction and rushed construction in Korea as well. So it's trying to kind of fix that issue. And it's not just to these kind of old and relatively cheap apartments, really expensive apartments in Korea. There's often been complaints of noise between floors as well. Even cases with the, for example, the most or one of the most expensive apartments, Signiel, in the Chamsil area. Millions of dollars it costs, but they have to install spongy flooring because, because there's been complaints of interfloor noise. So yeah,
Right.
it doesn't really matter how expensive the apartment is. Interfloor noise between apartments have always been an issue in Korea, unfortunately.
You're right. You're alluding to shoddy construction, and it doesn't matter how pricey the apartment real estate is. It's just, it was maybe not a priority in our construction standards, and now we have legal boundaries to ensure that we live in a quiet space. Seems important in a dense city like Seoul. Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
Urea tariff quota.
So the government has decided to extend the tariff quota on urea, which was set to end this year. So it's to be extended until next year. The extension aims to reduce the burden on companies importing urea from third countries other than China. As we mentioned before, China offered the cheapest of the bunch, which is why we overly rely on China's exports. Now, when they suddenly curb their exports, it becomes a problem. So what's the latest, Adam?
Yeah, it certainly does. And the government is also planning to increase the volume of urea secured through additional contracts with third countries that are considering services related to producing urea or diesel exhaust fluid domestically in the long term as well. So homegrown urea we could be seeing quite soon. Now, the government intends to continuously increase the volume of urea imported from overseas to stabilize the domestic market. They'll also provide temporary financial support for some of the shipping costs for urea imported into Korea by April next year. The government is preparing a fast-track inspection system to reduce the period from application to issuing a pass certificate from 20 days to 5 days in anticipation of an increase in imports of finished urea products. So basically getting the import process done quickly so that these products can come in quickly. Now, to diversify imports, allocation tariffs will be applied to diesel exhaust fluid from countries like Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. Starting next January, they'll plan to promote services for self-reliance, including examining ways to build domestic production facilities. The government plans to monitor the domestic supply situation daily. They will also plan to ask the freight, bus, construction, machinery industries, as well as gas stations, to limit the amount of urea each person can buy to prevent hoarding as well. There's been kind of a downtrend in diesel powered vehicles in Korea, but a lot of these construction and commercial vehicles and trucks still use diesel, and they therefore need this DEF to run. So, of course, it is an issue, and we saw a problem a couple of years ago regarding this shortage. So, of course, the government doesn't want a repeat of that.
And I mean, the ripple effect is much more severe than one might imagine. I mean, that disruption 2 to 3 years ago, right? I mean, if trucks are halted, you're talking about construction sites seeing a delay, maybe for some of us getting our shipments and parcels in order, things like that. So it does affect us eventually.
Right, yeah.
All right, let's move on to our final keyword of the day.
COVID infection level.
So the Korean government is considering lowering the COVID-19 crisis alert level as early as this week. I know we kind of put the issue on the back burner, but what can we expect?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done anything related to COVID-19, but it still has been somewhat of a concern still in the country. It wasn't completely forgotten about, but the government already made COVID-19 similar to the kind of seasonal flu in terms of how serious it is considered. This week, they will talk about changing the alert from warning to caution. But because the flu and other lung infections are spreading, It's not sure if they will change the alert level quite yet. Of course, it is winter, so the seasonal flu is running rampant. Case in point with myself recently as well. And the government will decide after looking at the COVID-19 situation and listening to experts as they have been doing. If they lower the level to caution, the way they handle COVID-19, of course, will change accordingly. The system will focus more on the disease control headquarters and they will watch COVID-19 cases a little bit differently. They'll also maybe stop helping to pay for COVID-19 tests and relevant treatment for people at high risk, so the elderly and those with infectious diseases already. Even if they do lower the alert level, people might still need to wear masks in some places, like hospitals as well. But of course, nothing has been decided yet. We'll know sometime this week or next, so we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you very much, Anna. I hope you feel better. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.